everyone, and thank you so much for watching all of the Zelda Majora's Mask videos. Here are a few closing thoughts that I have about Zelda Majora's Mask before I move on from one of my favorite games of all time, and most definitely my favorite Zelda game of all time. When it came to the initial hype of this game, I invite you to Google Nintendo's E3 trailer to Majora's Mask, which unfortunately, as far as I know, the only one that exists is that somebody was holding up a video camera taping the theater screen, and it is epic, perhaps the most epic E3 trailer I've ever seen. One thing I'm curious about is, wasn't it the case that some years ago there was this Nintendo GigaLeak and gigabytes of data, proprietary Nintendo data was leaked somehow mysteriously onto the internet? Well, my question is, what about the Zelda Majora's Mask E3 trailer? Surely that was in the GigaLeak. Why can't we have some sort of original actual video file of that? But also, interestingly enough, you can look at and see various amazing attempts at people trying to actually recreate that Zelda Majora's Mask E3 trailer. When I played Zelda Majora's Mask 3D, I absolutely loved that remake, but there are some interesting differences. Now obviously, the Nintendo 3DS was able to handle considerably far superior graphics, but a few things that struck me as odd, in the 3DS remake, they've completely changed bosses 3 and 4, and I thought to myself, why? And in fact, some of the masks have actually been changed as well, and again, I'm like, what the crap? Why? And the worst change of all, unfortunately, in the 3DS remake, because if you watch my playthrough, we actually have to do some ingenious sequence breaking to find the soldier who gives us the stone mask, which completely breaks the pirate's fortress because you're invisible to everyone. For some stupid reason, in the 3DS version, they have him right there in the pirate's fortress, so you don't even have to play the game. You can just talk to him with the lens of truth, get the stone mask, and then completely destroy that section. I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, to me, that's equivalent to, let's just start a Mario game and, oh hey, here's the golden Tanuki suit. You can just, play through the whole thing and reach the credits. Like, you can get a participation trophy. You don't actually have to play the game. So I love my life-size replica prop mask of Majora's Mask, as well as the smaller PVC version, both by First 4 Figures. I wish that they would make all of the masks. I would buy all of them. I would buy all of the happy masks. I would buy all of the transformation masks. I would even buy the 4 boss death masks. But speaking of how dark, sad, and depressing this game is, have you put 2 and 2 together? As we're progressing through the game, we come to understand that in order for us to obtain a mask with power of transformation, somebody had to die for us to obtain that. So you might think back, how did we get the Deku mask? And all of the pieces were there. We see a very sad tree that looks like a Deku scrub. Second, did you notice that when we were racing the Deku Butler, he said that he reminded us of his son, and then at the very end, after all of the credits, right after all of the credits are supposed to be showing how everyone is happy, the final scene that we see is the Deku Butler by this really sad looking tree that looks like a Deku shrub. A super sad way to end that game, honestly, and really when I first saw that, I'm like, oh no, that's right. Because often we kind of sometimes forget what happens at the very beginning of games before we're familiar with the game itself. Another thing I love about this game is how interconnected it is. Nintendo really spent the time making sure that any given NPC has a complete life. Like, they don't just suddenly disappear. They were like planning out, like, where is this person physically going to be throughout all of these 3 days? And sometimes they are extremely well hidden. One of my favorite well hidden characters is the brave samurai who, late in the 3rd day, he is sitting there fearless saying, "Let the moon come, I shall slice it to pieces with my blades." And yet, if you go into his place after midnight, he is nowhere to be seen, and yet he is cowering in his back room. So I mean, obviously the game does have negatives, as well as the inherited negatives from Ocarina of Time, such as the frustrating Epona controls, and this game adds the frustrating Zora swimming controls, but ultimately this game is as close to perfection as I think they can come, especially on Nintendo 64 hardware. Again, please, by all means, see if you can do better. In the magazine Nintendo Power, they used to have various arena challenges. I think it was much more difficult for people to actually cheat in order to get high scores. The premise on a lot were, what is the highest score you can get on, say, Game Boy Tetris? And then so you'd have all of these kids taking pictures of their Game Boy screens and sending that into Nintendo Power, and hundreds and hundreds of people as well as their scores got printed. Now, at some point in life, obviously, with technology and tools and even digital photoshopping ability, it reaches this point where it's impossible to actually ascertain whether or not they have cheated or if this is a fake picture. So eventually Nintendo Power did cut this section from their magazine. But the interesting thing is they also used to have in that arena challenge just a twisted challenge, something that really you couldn't necessarily prove with an individual picture. You would have to have a continuous video of it, but it was some challenge set out so that, people who read the magazine could actually try. So one such twisted challenge that I thought of, I never sent it in, so this is the first time that I'm personally sharing this thought with the world, is that on Zelda Majora's Mask, what is the least amount of times that you have to play the Song of Time, resetting the 3 days? And so my twisted challenge to you, the viewer, is, can you beat Zelda Majora's Mask by only playing the Song of Time 2 times? And yes, that actually does count the very first time when you play it as a Deku Shrub at the very, very beginning of the game. You have to play through the prologue, get your ocarina back, you play the Song of Time once. Then you have to be able to get through and complete the Woodfall Temple, and then get through and complete the Snowhead Temple before you play the Song of Time for your second and final time. Thus, equivalently, we're basically saying you're only hard saving the game 2 times. At which point, when you reset the clock, you have to be very quick by going and rescuing Epona so that you can reach and then eventually attain and beat the Great Bay Temple, and then you should just have enough time to reach all the way to the Stone Tower Temple and complete it as well. Just as you're running out of time, you could run back to Clock Town, play the Oath to Order, and then beat Majora's Mask. So it is obviously possible to beat the final boss with just Link, and honestly, maybe in some sense, using the Fierce Deity Mask makes it a little too easy. But one thing that's not pictured that I love to do is once you get the Fierce Deity Mask, you can go back to the previous 4 bosses and refight those, and it's so ridiculously fun and easy. Now, at least that's my twisted challenge for you to play Majora's Mask as intended. Glitch-free. So speaking of, we'll conclude this epilogue video by showcasing a few glitches that I always loved to do. Alright, first thing we do is we want to enter this area and suspend our save with this owl statue. Alright, now we go into another save file, which happens to be an exact clone of what I just opened. Now, every single owl statue in the entire game can only be accessed with Link. However, on Milk Road, there's a very special owl statue where you can check it whilst riding on Epona. So we're going to save and quit our game from here, whilst on Epona. Now here is where the magic happens. When we open up the first and original save file, ta-da! We're in Clocktown, but the game's triggered is like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be on Epona. Granted, that save state was, or that suspend state was first file too, but there's some accidental programming that got overlooked. so we can go hang out and take our little steed, Epona, all over town. Interestingly enough, all of these slopes are mostly congenial toward Epona. Big horse in the fairy fountain, baby. My trusty steed. So, interesting glitch. If we gaze through the telescope, so if we are gazing through the telescope when the clock ticks midnight on the night of the third day, we can actually see the entire scene of the telescope to show the interconnectedness of all of the programming, that no matter where we are, the same events are occurring, even if it has to be modeled or rendered differently. But also, interestingly enough, if we're looking through the telescope at the stroke of midnight, it does not trigger the last end music. We can still listen to the astronomical observatory until we run out of time, until the moon crashes into the planet. Scary. Interestingly, it's a different scene instead of him slapping his behind. But the second we come out of this, we have the last end music. Alright, now we can set this up. If we get to approximately right here, and then do 2 sideways jumps, alright, now the purpose of us coming here on the night of third day is that when we enter here, we will trigger the Kefi scene without doing any of the quest objects. Alright, so here's the deal. When we have the Fierce Deity Mask on any of the C buttons, we will not be able to put it on nor take it off unless we are in a room specifically programmed for a boss fight room. So any of the 4 main bosses or the final Majora's Mask boss fight. However, we're going to be looking at a very fascinating piece of programming that was overlooked in this section. So one thing, Link is wearing the bunny hood as we speak. As soon as we gain control of Kefi, what we can actually do is put the Fierce Deity Mask in that bunny hood slot. Now, if we were still controlling Link, we would not have been able to do that because it first checks to make sure, okay, is the bunny hood being worn? Yes, so therefore it would not be able to be put in the C-down position. So I will leave it to the viewer to guess, now what do you think will happen as soon as we regain control of Link with the bunny hood on and that index has now been changed to the Fierce Deity Mask? Cha-ching, we've bypassed that binary check, and therefore the mask is now on. But notice, we actually cannot take it off now. Ta-da! So yes, the Fierce Deity Mask is actually now completely stuck on our face. To my knowledge, it's not possible to reach any boss rooms no matter what previous setup we may have done. So, do you think Fierce Deity Link can ride Epona? If you try to ride the horse in that form, you'll flatten the poor thing. So that is interesting that it's actually programmed to not allow Fierce Deity Link to ride Epona. These skeletons are playing Ring Around the Rosie to this ill-fated Fierce Deity Link who can no longer reset the time. Fierce Deity Link, now trapped in this body without access to the ocarina to reset time and reset the 3-day cycle, decided that he would be surrounded by the Stall Children who eternally circle the grave in their eternal suffering, as Link knew that he would soon join them. As the dawn slowly approached, Link would be able to witness the most epic of the game over scenes, dying as Fierce Deity Link.